Today's episode of Maine Web News is brought to you by Event Essentials. Call them today at 207-431-0853 for all of your videography, photography, and mailing needs.
And now, Maine Web News.
Today I was invited to join the Piscataquis Patriots as they met with 2nd District Congressman Mike Michaud. Here's some footage from today's meeting.
We were told repeatedly that you would refuse to meet with us, but you stepped up to the plate and proved those naysayers wrong. Our founders understood that a government with separate but equal branches, ours would have the checks and balances necessary to assure the blessings of freedom for ourselves and our posterity. We are at a serious juncture in our nation, and our children's future are at stake. You likely already know that we, the Tea Party Patriots of Piscataquis County and Bangor, support constitutionally limited government, free markets, and fiscal responsibility. I'm almost done.
Pretty good. You ought to run for office.
No. No, I just would love to have your ear,
Okay.
should you have the honor of serving us again in this coming term. There are numerous cases of legislators who tell us one thing and then do another. And we cannot be certain that your opponent will adhere to the principles that we espouse. He has no record with which to judge his honesty, and we are a skeptical group of people. We were also told repeatedly that you wouldn't answer our questions, even if we did get this opportunity. You now have the opportunity to step up to the plate and prove those naysayers wrong. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think it is, quite frankly, I don't blame the citizens for being skeptical. And when you talk about fiscal responsibility, that's an issue. And one of the reasons why I joined the Blue Dog Coalition is because of fiscal matters. And quite frankly, when you look at the previous administration, as well as what's happening now, that has not been the case. When you talk about Congress and the executive branch, I do believe in separation of powers.
Good.
And unfortunately, under both Democrat and Republican administration, Congress has given up a lot of its authority. In one area, which I feel strongly about, is actually in trade. That's, when you look at commerce, I mean, that's Congress's responsibility. They've given that up when they passed in the law fast track under trade, and we've seen the repercussions of what's happened there as well. So I think there are some areas that we definitely can agree on.
Of course.
The ironic thing is I saw one lady who's said, well, we'll never agree on anything. And quite frankly, I looked back all the letters she'd written me, and we actually agreed on a lot of things. I voted against the financial bailout. I'm on actually Ron Paul's bill as it relates to transparency in the feds. Very supportive of PAYGO. One of the reasons why we had the surplus, I was in Congress at the time when President Bush was there, was because of statutory PAYGO. That was allowed to sunset. That's not going to solve our financial problems. It will solve, I think, any ongoing spending issues. Under the Bush administration, when they passed the massive prescription drug bill, which actually was unfunded, it cost over $1 trillion. They lowballed that number tremendously. But under that legislation, it required that the administration bring forward a plan if the funding for Medicare does not meet what actually the expenditures were. And I think it was either 2 or 3 years in a row. And if it didn't, then the administration would have to bring a plan to Congress on how they're going to make the two match up. It didn't say what it would have to do, it would just bring a plan forward. Unfortunately, the Speaker decided to do away with that in the rules. And first of all, it should never have been in the rules of the House, because that's to set a policy on how Congress is supposed to operate, and that was a policy area. And the second reason is I think we have to look at that. And it forces members of Congress to really focus on how do you bring them in line. We can have the debate of what we should do to bring them in line, but it forces us to actually make that, tough decision.
I think, though, something that we struggle with as the Tea Party versus any other political party is Congress can talk about, they know what's wrong, but they don't do anything about it. And I mean, even your voting record is generally on party lines, and I think most House members vote party lines. So nothing is happening except this massive infringement on kind of the people's power. The executive branch is gobbled up, and not just the current administration, but going back, it's just been a slow erosion. And you see that when you look at the last couple of years, the bailouts, this TAR, all these things that don't work, stimulus and things. And it's an increase of executive power, but Congress seems to be acquiescing to that. What is Congress doing to pull the power back into the hands of the people? Because
the number that's out there is 96%, I think, is what I read, that you're voting along party lines. That was in the paper or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So to his point, the Blue Dog Coalition, and I guess I like that. It sort of brings you to the center of the aisle a little bit. So how would you label the rest of the group?
The other 90.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me address that, because I don't pay attention how many times I vote with the speaker, because when I look at a bill before I vote on it, I look at how it's going to affect the state of Maine. And if it's going to affect us in a negative way, how can I improve it if it can be improved to make the difference? If you ask the speaker, she will tell you. I mean, I'm not one that falls in line with the speaker. As a matter of fact, Jim Clyburn, who was a Democratic whip, was telling me on one issue that they actually had to draw straws to figure out which one was going to talk to me about the issue, because my concern is what's happening in Maine. Yes, if you look at most of the issues, there's not much. Most of the issues are solved very easily in Congress, so that number is definitely going to be up. And it gets to part of your question and whether or not we're able to make some of the changes. Statutory pay-go wasn't easy. I mean, that was a fight within the Democratic caucus to get statutory pay-go, but it was because of the Blue Dogs holding together that we were able to get that signed into law. When you look at the commission, I mean, that wasn't the president's idea. It was the Blue Dogs. When we met with the White House, we're actually been pushing for a statutory commission. And here again, I would emphasize, I hate it. We shouldn't be doing it, but neither party has the willingness to make those tough decisions. Since the Senate did not pass it, it fell short. Then the president decided to do it on its own. And I'm sure whatever comes out is definitely going to be divided. When you look at the health care bill, there are actually a lot of changes made in the health care bill. And one of the things that we insisted upon is that it had to be paid for one way or another. And that we've been criticized by individuals. For instance, there is $450 billion worth of cut under Medicare. And the criticism has been, well, that's cutting programs for all seniors. No. The part of that funding cut under Medicare is because of the waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. We get, when I say we, I'm talking in general terms, criticized by saying, well, government is way too big, so you got to cut down the size of government on one hand. On this other hand, we're saying, well, look at the high unemployment rate. We got to do something to get jobs in the economy. Well, if you look at the sectors that's doing well, actually it's the private sector that has been increasing on the jobs. What's skewing that number actually is in the public sector, because those jobs they're reducing the number of jobs in the public sector. So it's part of the problem is trying to get the information out there to the general public as far as what's really happening. And you got sides on both sides, the Republican and Democratic side. I mean, they spend all their time, I think, in a room trying to spin what they're doing, and they're not doing what's right for, quite frankly, the American people.
You're speaking of Maine when you say private sector, public sector jobs?
No, that's national. I haven't, Maine, the numbers will not come out until October 22nd as far as what the unemployment number is. So they'll be looking at those to try to figure out on private versus public sector jobs. You know, it's not the job of the federal government to create jobs. I think I view our job as to be able to you know, streamline the process and you know, eliminate some of the red tape that's out there.
Can I get in a question
So,
before we have another?
sure.
But back to the red tape. Now, I think a lot of the problems that people will see with this this healthcare issue is we're seeing now red tape. Red tape. They're trying to perhaps repeal the law where people have to, businesses have to claim $600. So let's say that we come to see more and more of that as we get more information about what that stack of healthcare bill, what is in there, because we don't know all of it. What happens if it doesn't work out to be good for Maine? And I direct you to the Dirigo Health that we have in Maine, and it doesn't work. It's covered a fraction of the people at much higher cost than estimated. Mainers turned down funding it further with the beverage. You know,
Yeah,
back in 2008, that was turned down. So Mainers, I think, said, yeah, I don't think this is a good plan for Maine. What happens if the national plan turns out to be something that Mainers don't want? Is that something you think is a possibility? And if it is a possibility, is it something that you would support Mainers on trying to either get out of it or change it so that it's better for Maine?
Absolutely. I mean, that whole healthcare debate, I was getting it hit from both sides, both the left and the right, and the staff was getting it.
I guess so.
Because they were getting all the calls, and here again, it gets back
I was
to,
one of those.
yeah, you know, it's sometimes it's a no-win situation. And I read the bill several times, and then we have what they call a manager's amendment, where they'll bring in an amendment that will change some of the bills, and I wasn't gonna commit one way or another until I saw everything. You know, we
So
got.
let me get this through, how you're answering hers is, in the future, if you see other things, provisions in that bill that are adversely affecting Maine, you have no problem standing up and say stop.
None whatsoever.
Yeah, I would just thank you, like you said, for voting against the bank bailout. You were our only representative in Washington that had the courage and foresight to do that. Very well done. Now, to extend on what he had mentioned about, you know, the founding fathers, you know, rebelling against the tea, they also rebelled against the invasion of privacy that was going on, and the Patriot Act has brought all of that right back to that point, and you also voted against the Patriot Act, so two things to thank you for. The third thing that I often find myself defending you for with the Tea Party folks is you also supported Ron Paul's bill to audit the Federal Reserve. However, I would take exception to one thing that you said. In the end, you didn't vote for the full audit that Ron Paul had wanted. It was kind of a lesser version of the audit. Why the change on that?
I'd have to look at the specifics of that, you know, because a lot of times, unfortunately, what happens in Washington, a lot of amendments actually get added to a
Right.
bill. That might be the reason why. So I'd have to look specifically.
Right.
Well, what Ron Paul
appreciate that.
had,
I'll look into it.
yeah, what he basically said, we should audit it every year, a full audit, we should know everything they do, they control our monetary system. And what instead got passed was a one-time audit just of where the bank bailout money went to, which is good, that's better than nothing. But if Ron Paul were to bring up a full audit, is that something that you would?
Yeah, because I think his original bill was a full audit.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
And it didn't
and I'm a-
pass.
You're for that.
And I'm a co-sponsor of that.
That's why I was
original bill.
surprised in the roll call vote that I saw no under Mike Michaud. I said, what?
Yeah.
So you'll get
Yeah.
back to them on why
Yes.
particularly you
Okay,
changed,
thank
that's
you.
wonderful, that's what we
Yeah.
wanted to hear. Instead of spin, we wanna hear, you know, your reason.
Real quick, healthcare bill, a good example of 10th Amendment issues. And, you know, what would your position, a number of states are questioning it, if it goes to court and the Supreme Court decides it is a 10th Amendment, I mean, would you support Maine and the US government, you know, kind of getting out of the healthcare business?
Actually, I think there've already been a lower court case that upheld the law
Right.
as is. Quite frankly, to just be honest and upfront, you know, as far as saying the bill's gonna get repealed, well, first of all, those who are saying it is, that's not gonna happen.